and there were others on different planets, that all of them were created for the same task in these different areas, and they all had the ability to communicate with one another, and it was like saying that they were cousins. So it's a very complicated question to answer because it is so complicated to explain. It's almost beyond my words to be able to clarify it.
Contact Henry Deacon, who has encountered these situations from a completely different standpoint, working under contract for the American military and American intelligence services, has said that it would take a book of at least 1,000 pages, and he just did not have the energy to write that. Or maybe he said 10,000. Maybe he's not counting. And the impression I got is that this whole backstory is so complex, so deep, so convoluted, almost beyond human understanding, such a backdrop of complexity, that it's like, who are we to try and figure this out? We've actually got our own problems. Anything else is just intellectual curiosity. But the fact is that they're there. At least some of them are caring about us, it would seem. The question I do have, though, linked with what I was just mentioning about the American military and the American intelligence services, do you know anything about the possible relationships of this group with the military, or is it a different group of aliens that they have been working with? Do you know anything about that, or is it a question you're unable to answer?
The question is, will I answer? I have not been told anything directly by these beings as to any relationship that was formed with any government or any group on the earth. So let me make that clear. I have not been given any direct information regarding that. They haven't said, yes, we work with these people, we're working over here with that person. However, I have been shown and told certain things that were of a darker side, and warned of certain things. For example, at one point I was shown something it's difficult for me to talk about. I was shown an image of being in an underground base, that what took place there was so dark and ugly and horrifying to me that it was difficult for me to deal with. I don't know how to say this nicely, but it was I saw images of beings and of creatures that were just beyond the human comprehension of being able to see in real life. Now, what happened in this time that I was shown this, I was in the astral, and the being, the tall blonde that I was with, said, you must be very quiet, because if you're not, they will know that we are here. And don't ever come to this particular area, it is very dangerous for you. And I said, okie doke, I'm not going anywhere near there. And so do these tall blondes have associations with certain groups on the planet? No, not that I'm aware of. You asked me about these other beings that so many people are familiar with, which one of the biggest ones is the Greys. I do not have any direct information, but here's what I was told by the tall blondes, that they are here as the caretakers of the earth, and that they would help protect us from ourselves or other things or that we may not be aware of. So does that mean other beings? Absolutely. Does it mean that there's a presence of other beings on the planet? Absolutely. Am I here to talk about those beings with you? No. Because I want the message of the tall blondes to be really clear with people that they are here in peace and that they do not mean us any harm. They will not come here and take over the earth. That is not their purpose. If it was their purpose, they would have done it long, long ago. And they do not have a dark agenda in this genetic program that they have going. And I want to talk about that because it's something that's very important to the people of Earth. In the third world, these individuals that were created for the purpose of spiritual development. And when the spiritual development was taking place, all of this knowledge about spirit and life was a part of who we are, where we're from, and where we're going. But again, to reiterate what I've already said, it was like giving children matches. They just didn't deal with it very well. So what has happened since the beginning of our existence as humanity is that different families all over the earth have been given this certain genetic information in our genome, right? And along the way, certain families are, quote, monitored by these caretakers, not to do anything dark, but to help so that very slowly these vessels that we are living in, that we are a part of, have the ability to withstand this greater information and knowledge. Because, of course, our brain is nothing more than a computer that is based on an electrical charge within the body. So if we are overloaded with electrical charges, we will not be able to control the pathways in which this information is flowing, and we become crazy. So these families have very slowly had their DNA, new strands of DNA, to help facilitate greater understanding, greater knowledge, greater respect for ourselves and the earth. And that's what's happened with these families that are being monitored. So that is also why sometimes people have had these things running in their families, because they're one of these families that have been monitored. And that's why the path leading back to where we all came from would be very interesting, to be able to look at the family tree of some of these families through time. So
isn't this this is actually, the Greys are in a sense working for, at least one faction, are working for the tall blondes, or however you want to call them. Because you're talking about also in your 88 experience, you have the 4-foot-tall beings. Those were, I assume, the Greys, showing you onto the ship, and at which time you were, meeting with the tall blondes. So what happens is the Greys are actually handling the genetic sort of manipulation under the direction of perhaps these higher beings.
Only to a certain degree, and there needs to be some clarification there. And this is one of the things that I've myself have been very frustrated with in regard to the whole phenomenon, is the terms that we use in order to describe what it is that we're talking about. When, for example, when I myself say the word gray, the first thing that pops into my mind is a being that has wrinkled skin, has just the whole energy of fear for me personally. They have their heads are larger, but they're not huge. Their eyes are slightly slanted, that sort of thing. When I'm talking about the Greys that I'm talking about, if you wanted to call them that, these are 4 feet high with round black eyes and almost look like robots. There's no features to them whatsoever. They're very androgynous. These other Greys with the wrinkled skin, and they kind of, their little tiny noses, those are a completely different breed. So there needs to be clarification in that. Here's what I tell people also. There is something that needs to be said about the understanding of people out there when someone such as myself comes forward. When we talk to you about our experiences, we talk to you about them not only from what it is that we've experienced, but also from our perceptions, understanding, and how much we were taught by them. So this is very important.